Brigham,
And we are back with another podcast with lip service for contractors, you guys. We've got a fantastic show for you today. It is the second half of our presentation of the Pattern for Excellence, which is an incredible tool for business owners and entrepreneurs and people. So with that, let's get started. Last year, I was a bit of addicted. I was an addicted person when it came to Spartan races. What is a Spartan race? Well, it's an obstacle course trail race. And many of the races that we did were 13 miles long with 5,000 feet of elevation gain. And one of these, on one of these races, I was able to get a bunch of business owners to come with me. And I wonder why they would go, right? You're kind of thinking this is crazy stuff. And well, the fact of the matter is that it's in Hawaii. So yeah, it was pretty easy to get them to come. And so one of these business owners, his name is Crandall. He owns a heating and cooling company in Utah. And he said, you know what, I want to do this. Well, the issue is that he weighs 250 pounds. He's 6'5". And I said, look, Crandall, you're going to die. You're going to die if you don't do this. And so don't do what? Don't train before you do this, right? So you've got to train. And so I told him what to do, the different trainings that he should do, and he took it seriously. He trained really hard. He lost 40 pounds before this race. It was incredible. And I told him, in fact, I told the entire team, I said, look, you guys, I'm going to start before you. I start at 8:30 in the morning in this age group. And then you're going to be in an open group, which is about 2 hours later at 10:30. As soon as I'm done with my race, I'm going to come back and find all you guys out on the field and make sure you come in okay. And the fact of the matter is that one of my goals was to podium. And so much so that I took it very seriously. I got a nutritionist and a trainer, and I did 10 of these things last year in 2019. I took fourth twice. So how's that for kicking the pants? But I was very determined to make sure the entire team got into the finish line and that nobody got hurt and so on and so forth. And so we went to Hawaii. I did my race. I finished fourth. I got over it very quickly because I had a bunch of business owners I needed to jump back out and help on the field. And so I ran back out on the field, and at about the 5 mile mark, I see Crandall coming down the hill. And he's looking ragged. He doesn't look good at all. And so I said, hey, Crandall, how's it going, man? I'll bet you're the last person in our group to get it to this point. And he didn't appreciate that very much. In fact, he was like, you know, I don't know if I like that thought that I'm the last one here, but you're probably right. And we both kind of chuckled, luckily. And I said, look, I'm going to meet you back here at the 8 mile mark. It's a bit of a loop. You're going to go through a couple of obstacles, and I'll meet you back here. I'll just wait here until you get. All right, sounds great. Well, even though he started his race at 10:30, he did not get to the 8 mile mark until 5 at night, 5 in the evening. And in fact, he said, I can't believe you're still here. In the back of my head, I was thinking the same thing. I can't believe I'm still here. And he said, I'm done. I don't want to race anymore. And I said, Crandall, you can't be done. You're still upright. You can still move. You can still go. And I knew that there was a part of him that wanted to punch me, but he was also really tired. So we kept going. We kept going together. We went through the rest of the obstacles and the rest of the way to the finish line. And the sun was going down at 7:30 at night while he crossed the finish line. And all the business owners were cheering him on and very excited for him and his achievement. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, Brigham, I got to tell you something. I said, what's that? He said, you know, I never planned to finish this race. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I trained to go 8 miles on this race. Thanks for helping me finish. You see, how I felt in that moment was worth 1,000 podiums. I would not trade it. And I realized that for leaders, for us, it wasn't enough for us to win. What was more important was to bring as many as we can to the finish line. And that's what leadership is all about. That's what indispensable leadership is all about, is bringing as many as you can to the finish line. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in 60 seconds.
Power Selling Pros is the customer service coaching company for contractors. Their one-on-one coaching for CSRs helps contractors book at least 85% of their calls and wow more customers. and their group training for technicians helps you create a better buying experience in the home and close more sales. Visit powersellingpros.com to learn more about how you can make more money with their coaching programs.
Chances are you love what you're hearing on Lip Service for Contractors. And if you want to go deeper, have an actionable playbook, or just want to learn from some of the most successful and profitable contractors in the industry, check out Clover Marketing from Josh and Laura. They give away free, amazing information, tools, SOPs, scripts, and processes that help their family business grow to over 140 million. And those same tools have helped other contractors in the industry blow up their business and grow an average of 20% every single year. Check out growwithclover.com/free gifts. They update the free gifts section all the time, so make sure you keep coming back. Welcome back to Lip Service for Contractors. And as you know, this is the second half of our presentation, the Pattern for Excellence, which is a great foundation for indispensable leaders. That's you and me on a regular basis. So let's jump right into it for the sake of time. The fifth principle in the Pattern for Excellence is about giving. All right, we want to give first to create a wow experience for everybody around us, as well as build long-term relationships. And let me give you an example of that. At the beginning of this year, COVID came down and it was crazy nuts. We had about 62 contractors call in almost overnight, right? And say, look, media says we're done. We got to close our doors. And I said to my team, you know what? We were born for this. In fact, Zach can attest. Those are my exact words. You guys, we were born for times like these. This is what it's all about. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep our coaches busy. We're going to keep them employed. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to tell those 62 contractors, don't worry about it. You're not going to pay a dime. As long as you're concerned about it, don't worry. We won't charge you a thing. We're just going to keep working together. We're going to keep coaching your team, because guess what? There's never been a more important time to continue working and coaching and inspiring your team. And so they moved forward with it. We coached them for free for a couple of months. And since that time, we've had 32 begun to pay. In fact, many of them called on their own and said, hey, I can pay now. We're good. We can keep moving forward. And it turned out to be a very strong team building event for all of us. Our team's never been closer. We've developed some really cool programs for dealers based on the needs that we saw that we had during this difficult time, and our clients are a whole lot more loyal. So it's been an incredible learning and growing experience for us.
Before we dive into this, I want to real quick. Speaking of giving, I want to give something right now, and I want to give just a little bit of crap to one of our hosts here, to Laura. By the way, we're gonna put this out publicly. Yesterday, we recorded this podcast, and it was amazing, brilliant. It's the best thing you've ever heard. Unfortunately, none of you get to listen to it because Laura forgot to press the record button. So
how am I married to this mean man?
Oh my God, it's public out there. When you're doing a podcast, pressing record is fairly important, just in case you guys ever consider starting your own podcast. Just throwing it out there.
You're so hilarious. So I was actually going to give you credit for you razzed me, and Josh is once Brigham was starting to talk there at the start of the podcast, and it was like a pretty serious story, lots of good nuggets in it. And Josh was smiling ear to ear. I was like, what's so funny? But I realized Josh does this thing called anchoring, that every time before he starts a public speaking thing, he anchors. And Josh, you can speak a bit more on what anchoring is. And I know it's a little off topic, but it's super powerful. And once he anchors, it like puts him in like this like state where he feels like invincible. And like you could be talking about something so sad and he just smiles ear to ear, and he does feel like he's in this invincible state. So Josh went literally before this podcast being like tired. Laura, we have to record the same thing we recorded yesterday, all pissed with me, giving me slack, and now he's smiling ear to ear. So Josh, just because you've had such a change in state, you've gotta give everybody the scoop on anchoring.
Well, That's so off topic, though.
I know. We'll quickly do it.
Anchoring is so powerful. It's such a great sales and lifestyle technique. But essentially what you do is you do like a physical, verbal, there's different ways of doing it, but you essentially create, mine is physical and audio and tactile, so feeling too. And every time I feel like on top of the world, I'll do that anchor, that thing, right? I'm not going to do it live because I just did it. And I don't want all of you people knowing exactly what I do because it works when you do it to me, just not as strong. Like let's say I just went skydiving or I just got this big sale or closed this big client, something I'm super excited about, I'll anchor. And what happens is your body starts associating that sound, that motion, that feeling with the actual emotion. So you could take yourself from the being most exhausted. I could be at a funeral, and if you anchored in front of me, like I'm going to start smiling and feeling amazing, and I can't help it, right? That's a totally different conversation, though. Look up anchoring if you want. I'm sure we could talk about it in one of our we'll talk about sales down the road, and that's a great sales technique, especially for comfort consultants and technician. Resetting yourself before each call. Anchoring is an amazing tool. But let's focus on giving right now.
It's an actionable though. And you have just given. You have just given to our listeners. So because Brigham's strategy is so interconnected with greatness.
Yeah, there you go.
So giving absolutely does build relationships, and whether you're selling or you're speaking, I always approach the moment in a very similar way. I treat it as if my entire life I've been preparing for this specific moment.
Yeah.
In fact, there are times where I tell my team, whoever's with me in the moment when I'm about to speak to a group of individuals, I tell them over and over again, we were born to be in this moment. So the same holds true with each podcast that we do. Josh is right. He should approach it that way. Yeah. He should.
So
this shows personalities too, right? That tells me a lot. You're much more serious than me. Like when I do a speaking event, I'm almost like before, hey, watch this. Let's see what happens. But that's the personalities. I'm way less serious, a lot more carefree than you. But yeah, back to giving. I do want to say this. Brigham was talking about literally giving away his services for free, which was amazing. And I think we could all appreciate the effort and the pain that must have taken. So to me and to Brigham, that's really not that painful, but to most people, that would be very difficult to wrap your head around. But when we say giving something, it doesn't necessarily mean giving something for free. It means just making an effort to take care of other people in a significant and real way. And I know we talked about this yesterday, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Make sure when you're giving, you get credit for it too. In business, in your personal life, it doesn't matter. It's amazing what can get done when no one cares about who gets the credit. I believe that. I live that for my personal life. But in business, when an example would be if you're changing the contactor and on that invoice it says changing contactor, $300, right? That's not a great experience, and you're going to get that second person coming to the house, the spouse that's looking at the invoice and like they were here 45 minutes, it's $300 and they just changed a contactor. Now they're looking it up online and hey, that's a $20 contractor. You're having issues. Give yourself credit for what you're already doing, which is when you change a contactor, you're not just changing a contactor. You're taking apart the entire system, pulling apart the shell, right? Removing the leads, unstrapping the contactor, putting a new contactor in, testing it, right? Re-putting the leads back on, strapping it in, making sure it's level, and then cleaning up around it, and then buttoning back up the system. That's what you're doing anyway. You might as well get credit for it, right? And that's so whenever you give something in a business sense, it's always good to capitalize on it too. Personal, I actually think the exact opposite.
So again, we touched on this yesterday, but I think it's kind of class. We recently had a plumber out in our rental business. We had a plumber out doing some plumbing work. And anyways, I thought he was like really only average, wasn't great. And I was just like, what's going on? Like this, what's going on with this guy? He was okay. And anyways, at the end of the call, he started speaking into his iPad on everything he had done and all the money he was giving me off, all that he'd done. Literally speaking into his iPad, telling the iPad what he'd done for the sake of documenting it for the company, but also as a way of getting flipping credit. And I was like, Jeannie Mac. I went from thinking this guy was like really mediocre, like what's the story with this guy? Would he ever perk up? To or will he like just maybe be a little bit more competent, to thinking this guy was actually a badass and he did a lot of stuff for us.
That's cool.
Yeah. Building value. And he did it within earshot purposely, right?
Oh, purposely. Yeah. Purposely. Right next to me, speaking into his iPad. And I was just like, you know what? That's bloody genius.
Yeah.
Another thing that you made me think about was, giving is not just giving something for free. It's also getting the credit for giving something. However, giving can also be giving can also be educating. And this brings me back to something we spoke about yesterday. The best salesmen are the people who educate first. So you don't.
Zach actually talked about it. So let's open up. Zach, the confused millennial.
Yeah, he's not confused about this, let me tell you.
I was confused after it happened, though. I was very confused because I learned that if you lead a sales conversation by giving an insight first, teaching the person something about their business, a new way to look at it, that it gives you credibility. And it takes the load of the work off of their shoulders of having to answer all your discovery questions, right? So I try this, leading with an insight. I thought, well, I'm going to be generous and give this guy a new way to think about his business. And he immediately says, you're wrong. 0 for 3. What you should have done is you should have started by asking me about my business and why I'm reaching out to you guys. That's what I normally would do. But I decided to start by giving, and he totally shut me down, right? Like really, really hard. So how do you explain that, right? How do you explain leading with generosity, leading with giving, but not being received?
So it seems like you followed a proven strategy that worked, and you kind of fell on your face without meaning to. So what's interesting is I listened to this book and I was like, geez, this is Josh.
By the way, we talked about this. This book's called The Challenger Sale. It's an amazing book.
Yeah.
Check it out.
So when
Don't be surprised if it doesn't work the first time you try it.
No, because
it works the first time.
Nothing works. No, nothing. And what's interesting, I think, is sometimes we can like misinterpret things. So I listened to this book and I was like, Jeannie Mac, this is Josh Kelly all over. So I was like, Josh, listen to this book. It kind of explains why you're good at sales. And sometimes when you do something with more intention, it becomes even more powerful. And he listened to it, and I think so many people could actually make the mistake and execute it in a way Zach did without knowing. And yes, he had the correct intention to go in with something he learned. Josh, yesterday you spoke about the way in which you roll it out, and immediately Zach was like, haha, I have such clarity. So kind of educate us right now and educate listeners on how to give from an educational standpoint, which is the best way to sell.
I mean, first thing first, I mean, I've certainly lived this and done this, but there's a book out there that describes it perfectly, because that's what it's all about. It's the Challenger Sale. The first thing I would do is check that out. That's an amazing tool. But what a lot of people make mistake when they're doing a Challenger Sale, just to define a Challenger Sale too, so everybody's on the same page, essentially is you don't go in there trying to sell your product or your idea. You don't go in there trying to build relationships. That's not the best way to make sales. And this is proven statistically without a doubt. The best way is actually to give insight and actually challenge customers or clients on what they think they need to a point, right? And then you lead them down the path instead of, here's my product, here's your problem, here's how you could solve it. Oh, my product's a piece of that, right?
Yeah.
So there's really two things that people make mistake on all the time is they rush into it and they haven't made sure, number one, that you're an expert on what you're talking about. It doesn't mean you have to be an expert over everybody in the world. You just need to know a lot more than the person you're talking to. And it has to be relevant to them. So you have to kind of know your stuff on specifically what you're talking about. So I know Brigham knows all about this. Lennox requires that every TM to read that book. It's an amazing book. But if you were to go in as a Linux TM and talk about, how to answer the phone properly to Brigham, it doesn't matter how much Linux has taught you. That's going to be a hard conversation, right? So you have to really know something simple, and it helps if it's something that's outside the normal thought process. So if I remember, Zach, I don't remember the exact detail. I don't even think we talked about it, but like, what exactly did you use as an insight for them?
Yeah. So the first step of the Challenger sale is to essentially show them you already understand their business, and
right.
then give insight. So in my trying to show him I understood, I said, we work with lots of heating and cooling contractors. And what we find is that generally they come to us with the same three things. It's either one, their CSRs are bleeding phone calls. They can't book enough appointments. Two, the customer experience isn't very good. It's kind of hard to listen to the calls because of low quality. Or three is you don't have a very good process in place for your CSRs to begin with, right? You don't have any type of scripting or anything to put them through so that the experience is consistent from one CSR to the next. And he says, you're 0 for 3.
That's probably a fair assessment, though, of most contractors.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It is.
It doesn't matter, though. I mean, in a way, what he showed is the opposite, that Challenger sell doesn't work in every situation. What he showed was...
I would disagree with that real quick. I think he didn't ask the questions to point the right direction.
Okay,
first.
so it wasn't properly implemented.
Correct.
Okay, so here's the deal.
Error.
If you user error, which happens all the time. So we know that a customer has an emotional need to be understood, first and foremost. We know that the customer has an emotional need to be cared about, right? That they are of worth. We know that a customer needs to feel reassured that they are working with the right people, talking to the right people. Those are soft skills. And what's interesting about working with territory managers and district managers at Lennox is they felt like the soft skills was the very thing that they were lacking, especially the way they worked with customers over the phone and even face-to-face. Because you've got to earn that face-to-face appointment over the phone. And that's where we came in to help them with those things. And we're beginning to train them on how to do it. But in my opinion, they go hand in hand. Challenger sell and the soft skills that Pattern for Excellence teaches go hand in hand. In fact, I was in Chicago earlier this week doing a training. It was a full-day training. And it was primarily for call handlers. But 4 hours in, there were a few business owners in there all talking about how this would be amazing for their technicians. And as a side note, every group that I teach, say it's a group of technicians, you know what they say? They say, oh my gosh, if our call handling team and our owners could just hear what you're teaching, it would be incredible, right? And then I go and I start working with call handlers and like, oh my gosh, if only the technicians and my business owner could talk, right? And then I go and I teach territory managers like, oh my gosh, if you could only hear our dealers, they could so benefit from this. And then I go and start working with dealers and they go, oh my gosh, our territory managers from Lennox, they need to hear this, right? Everybody else needs to hear this except for them, which I find really, really interesting. But 4 hours in, this owner says, if you could teach my techs these very same skills, because guess what? I have the perfect selling system. Right. And it followed very closely the way he described it to Challenger sell. He says, but the one thing it lacks, especially for the few that I have in my mind, right? He had a few technicians in his mind that he wanted to work with. This is what they need. They need those soft skills where they connect with the customer on an emotional level and find out what their needs are. Chances are, Zach, that your answer would be the same answer. But if you were to give your attention before you give him information, you'd be able to modify what you plan to challenge him on and teach him on based on the words that he used, the same words that he used. And you'd modify what you say based on what he said, ever so slightly. But then he'd feel understood and you wouldn't strike out.
So a few things there. Firstly, Lennox, it's required reading for Lennox, but it's also required reading for Service Titan. And like, what's hilarious, gas is an Irish word. Hilarious is
Gas is a normal word, just how you use it.
Oh yeah, that's very fair. So not the gas in a bottle. Gas is in hilarious. That Service Titan, people give out flip and stink about it, but they love it at the same time. And they ended up loving it at the start. They gave out stink about it. However, most contractors right now have it. So clearly the Challenger model works, and which I think is awesome. And secondly, if your comfort consultants or your techs are able to actually educate the customer on exactly the best option for them, they feel cared for. So back to Brigham's point, and back to the point before on the Pattern for Excellence model. And I think a formula that Josh uses is right back into the Challenger sale, and it's called I Notice Most of Why. Josh, I'll butcher the be God out of it, so go ahead, kind of elaborate real quick on I Notice Most of Why.
I wouldn't say that's a Challenger sale, to be honest. That's an entirely
Do you
different
think?
conversation.
But you're educating them. Yeah, I notice, and then most of, and then you're giving the why. So that's education to a point.
I mean, to a point.
That seems like
to a point. That's a soft way.
That seems more like something you'd like an ask principle, right? You're asking for something.
Yeah.
Well, we're heading on to ask, so I think it's kind of applicable.
Yeah. Well, let's let Brigham introduce it first, and then we'll
go ahead, Brigham.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah. So asking encourages action, and let me give you an example of that. When I first started working in the field of call handler training, or in training in general, I was asked by my significant other how long I intended to do this without getting paid, which is a pretty fair question. And obviously the question came from a state of anxiety. Why? Well, because I had just booked a flight to New York on a credit card, that handy dandy credit card. When you don't have any money, it's really useful. Yeah. And so she was really concerned about it. And the biggest part of her concern was due to the fact that I had not closed anybody in New York. These are all possible clients, but not existing clients. And so it was a huge gamble, but I just knew in my gut that something would work there. And I had 3 opportunities, one in New York, one in Staten Island, and one in East Brunswick, New Jersey. And so I go out there, and the guy in New York that I had scheduled an appointment with showed up 2 hours late, only gave me 5 minutes of his time, and then shooed me out the door. It was really quite inspiring, especially after the conversation with the significant other. And so I drove to Staten Island, and after about an hour talking about the services that I wanted to provide, he said that he wasn't the decision maker. And in the back of my head, I was going, wow, this is just crazy. If you've ever read any of Jeff Gittimer's books, who is a phenomenal sales trainer, he says, if you can't get in touch and talk to the business owner, well, you suck. And so in my mind, I was thinking, man, Brigham, you suck, right? You can't even get to the decision maker. And so finally I go to East Brunswick, New Jersey. We have a great conversation, but he's not ready to sign. And so I go back to the hotel that night empty-handed, and had a very tough and difficult conversation with my wife, and never forget it. I felt like a complete and a dismal failure. I get up after a sleepless night. I'm packing my bags. My flight leaves at 2. Not sure what I'm going to be doing for the next 4 hours, right? It was early in the morning. And I thought, you know what? This isn't over. And I decided that I was going to call back each of those leads. I called the guy in New York, and of course he didn't answer. And I called the guy in Staten Island, and he referred me to his owner, and I called the owner. We had a great conversation, but he wasn't ready to sign. And then finally I called the opportunity in East Brunswick, New Jersey, and crazy thing, he said, I love what you do. Why don't you come back in? Let's talk some more. And after a while of fierce negotiation, right, he signed. And It was awesome. It was incredible. It was an amazing experience, and it came down to me asking. And as a side note, the decision maker in Staten Island also signed up 6 months later. So 2 out of the 3 eventually did in fact sign up. But the one who signed up, gold medal, Micah Gugliero, in East Brunswick, New Jersey, referred me to several other contractors, and I started hiring all my friends. I don't have a lot of friends, and we brought them all in, and we all started working, and and we all started working, training, call handling teams, and that was our start. Our real start in the industry is through New York. This gut feeling I had that I needed to just get out there and make something happen, and it came down to asking. Asking encourages action.
Just as a reminder.
Yeah.
You suck.
Yeah. Zach's showing the book right now. Decision makers won't give you an appointment. You suck.
Yeah.
All these years you've been blaming it on someone else.
It's a good one.
Jeff Gittimer, baby.
Oh.
Yeah. So asking encourages action. That's what that principle is all about.
Yeah. So we'll go into what Laura tried to set up inappropriately timed.
Yes. I get my way after all.
Yeah.
You win.
So
happy wife, happy life.
There you go. When we're talking about asking, really from a contractor's, I like to make it real actionable, right? That's kind of what we do at Clover Marketing in general, right? But when you're asking, what we're really trying to do is get technicians to open their mouth, right? I mean, if we're being honest, that's the biggest problem in the industry. And there's a good reason we struggle to get them to do it. Like, we ask them to do so much for us, but the truth is, I can't even get guys to consistently wear shoe covers. So I have the advantage and the disadvantage of working on scale, not just with Parker and Sons, but with companies across the United States, where I have to teach hundreds of technicians how to do things. And one of the biggest things I teach and have had a lot of success on is getting technicians to sell accessories, to increase their average ticket, to open their mouth and talk about things that, if you were to ask them if this was your business, what would you do different? Almost 99% of technicians are like, well, I'd sell IAQ products and I would upgrade the thermostats. Yeah, do those things, right? I agree. Can we do that? But you have to make it simple for them. Because if you don't make it simple for them, they won't do it. And a big flaw with this too is technicians don't like to be salespeople. Everybody's a salesperson, whether you admit to it or not. Everybody's in sales in some way. I'm not going to get into that conversation or argument, but technicians specifically hate being considered salespeople. They like to fix things, overwhelming majority of them, right? So it's very difficult to get them to talk about things. And they feel uncomfortable. When they feel uncomfortable, they tend not to do it. So what most contractors do is they'll have here's how you sell IAQ products. You talk about sneezing, you talk about sickness, you talk about asthma, you do this 5-minute presentation, then you ask these questions throughout the process. And then that's how you sell IAQ. Here's how you sell a new system, right? They need to upgrade a system. You talk about this, and they got a 5-minute system for that. Here's how you talk about replacing the wire here. You talk about this, and it's a 5-minute system for that. And the truth is, that's a better system than what I'm going to teach you in a perfect world. But I don't know about you. I don't have perfect technicians, never had, and I don't live in a perfect world. So I have to simplify. Simplification is the greatest tool for execution. It needs to be simple to execute, right? So I use a simple cadence to literally sell anything in the house. And it's 3 steps, and it's super, super incredibly simple. It's I noticed, most of, why. So let me break this down. I notice is a very simple, non-aggressive way to bring up something. Most of is when I set expectations and I get to make one selling point. Why is an open-ended question as to why they have or don't have this thing, right? So an example would be is I noticed you don't have IAQ product. We'll say specifically air scrubber, right? I noticed you don't have an air scrubber. most of our customers have air scrubbers because it improves the air that you breathe. And they say you could actually buy a filter or be a filter. I certainly would prefer you buy a filter. Can I ask why you don't have an air scrubber? And then you shut up. First one to speak loses, right? And then whatever they say, you handle as an objection. And if you clear the objection, you've now talked about something without having to think about it, and you're likely to get that accessory sale or that upsell or that lead generation or wherever it is, right? Or that cross sell. So it's a very powerful way because now a technician doesn't have to have 20 different techniques to sell things in the house. They have one technique for everything, and they don't have to think about it anymore. It's incredibly easy to pitch anything. So just to give an example, to clear it up, Brigham, give me one random thing to sell in the house.
UV light.
I just did an air scrubber. Give me something else.
Filter.
So let's say a media filter, like a 4-inch media theater, right? I notice you don't have an upgraded filter. Most of our customers get upgraded filters because it actually cleans the air they breathe. It's better for the system. It makes the system last longer and more efficient. And I mean, no one wants to be breathing in dust and germs and gunk. Can I ask why you don't have an upgraded HEPA filter or media filter or whatever? And then you shut up. Yeah. That's just simple, right? You could do this for, hey, I noticed you have an older water heater. Most of our customers consider replacing, right? Blah, 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 blah. I noticed you have an older AC system. I noticed you don't have a condensate safety switch. I noticed you don't have a carbon monoxide detector. Say that what? What's up?
I noticed you're not a member of our maintenance plan.
Most of our customers are members of our maintenance plan because they save money and they get priority service. And it's a much better experience. Can I ask why you haven't signed up for an agreement yet?
So a few things there. Firstly, take that formula, like word for word. I noticed most of why. Steal it, 100%. So firstly, you never...
Let's do this, Laura, too. Laura, give me your email.
Yeah, so it's Laura at growwithclover.com. Reach out and we have a one sheet on it, so we can give that to you. But that
it breaks it up word for word. We're talking about giving again, right?
Yeah, back to giving. So, and the reason we give is because we care. Look at that, Brigham. So the reason I brought that back up is, firstly, Josh, you never said most of. So the reason most of is so powerful is everybody is most of. Like if most people wanted something, well, geez, I'm most people. So again,
that's saying social proof a little bit. Yeah,
correct. So every nuance of that formula, like it's a 3-step formula, is powerful. So write it down, use it. You can email me for it. Another thing is, I'll give you an example of where it was played out. So we were out with one of our clients, and Josh, you probably have more of the details on this. But we thought we did a tech training bright and early in the morning, and was it maintenance agreements they were selling, Josh?
Which client we talking about?
So, well, we're not going to drop names of our clients, but
okay,
so the long story short, they hadn't sold any of this product. Very few of them in like the last 6 months. When they used this formula, we incentivized them by saying we'd give them, I don't know, $20 per whatever they sold. They ended up selling
the one we just did.
Did
like a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Explain kind of the results they got from that.
It was IAQ products. It was, I think it was phenomenal. But they're the same as air scrubber. Like you can make the argument. I don't want to get into that, which one's better or why, but it was the UV light system, right? And I had talked the owner into giving a spiff, right? So incentivizing the team. I taught them. I noticed most of why, and then I got a verbal promise from all of them and a commitment to sell a certain amount that day and that week, right? And the goal was to sell, I think it was on a Thursday morning we did this. And I said, I had them give me a commitment to sell 10 by the end of the week. So they had 2 days to do it. By the way, they had sold 10 literally like so far this year. So they didn't sell a lot of these. It was a push they wanted to make. And I wanted to really challenge myself and challenge them because it was outside their comfort zone. And I believe they sold 10 before that day was up. So
yeah,
a full year they sold 10. they sold 10 in a day of this UV product, Phenomenal Air.
It's so passive. Like the tech doesn't see it. They don't feel it's salesy because it's so soft that it really doesn't seem salesy at all. Yeah, they're educating but another thing there, back to the ask, you as the business owner you're asking that of your techs. Like so many business owners just accept that their sales guys, their techs don't want to sell. There's a formula to make sure that you're setting them up to do something that they usually find uncomfortable. And because it's such an easy, soft formula, they now are comfortable with. So again, it's back to that ask. The business owner has to ask.
They don't have to think.
No, they don't. And it just becomes, but it's something the business owner needs to ask of them over and over and repeat that. I notice most of why over and over and over. And eventually it will just stick.
Yep.
So we've covered give. So actually, let's go back to all the ones we covered yesterday, just as a reminder. Be positive, be prepared, listen, care, give, which we've covered today, ask, which we've covered today. Now it's be valuable. So Brigham, elaborate more on how be valuable is such a strong part of the formula for excellence, the pattern for excellence, and why it's so powerful, like period, across all kind of leadership situations.
Yeah, the thing about value is that it creates commitment. And if you are valuable, in other words, valuable in the specific thing that you do better than anybody else, people will pay for that. People won't pay for the thing that's unproven or hasn't worked for anybody else. They're very reluctant to pay for that. But if you are proven at that specific thing that you do, then people will begin to pay for that and you'll become more valuable. And that is all about innovation and entrepreneurship. In our specific industry, and what industry am I referring to? I'm referring to the training industry, not just the heating and cooling industry. But there are training organizations that have been in the past good at training technicians, good at training comfort advisors, and maybe even good at training owners. But not many of them were good or even spent much time training CSRs and dispatchers. So we found our way into this industry because we focused on the one department that everybody else kind of ignored. And we became very, very good at it. I studied it. I learned about it. I practiced different things. I trained it over and over again. We put we're to the point now where we put 1,000 CSRs through our program every year. It's a bit of a university. It takes about 1.5 years to complete. There's 4 levels of certification, but we're also the only ones that guarantee the result at the end, that you'll book at least 85% of your phone calls will give you your money back. And never once have we had to give money back. Why? Because it works. It works every time. It is a well-oiled machine. And the benefit of it is that say we were to tell a dealer that what is it? And I'm sure Josh can chime in on this, but you invest $3,600 a year and you get a CSR that's bringing back to you at least $125,000 a year. And of course, yesterday, Josh put it a different way that really kind of put the icing on the cake for us. But that's basically what we do day in and day out with the CSRs, the dispatchers, and lead coordinators that we teach, is that they are bringing immense value to their organizations because of the things that they learn through our program. But it all comes down to being valuable. You focus on the specific thing that you do better than anybody else, and that value that you create will provide a commitment between you and those that you serve.
And not to sound like a broken record, but if you're being valuable and you're educating, it's back to the bloody Challenger. That's just such a solid book, the more you think about it.
Whoever brought that up yesterday is a genius.
I know. I know that
we'll never know. We'll never know.
Nobody will, literally no one will ever know.
Hilarious, Josh Kelly, hilarious. Yeah, and I think the Challenger was almost probably more applicable to being valuable because, again, it's just educating. And as a result, people buy from the person who seems to know their stuff, because then there's trust. So, value.
So here's a question.
Go ahead.
I was working with this company this morning, and there were 2 people in the training with me. There was the owner, and then there was the service manager. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about this concept of value, specifically as it pertains to their technicians and their CSRs, how they as leaders can create value for those people. And, one of the things we discussed was identifying what is valuable to each individual in the team, right? Because giving verbal appreciation matters to some people, but not to others, right? And giving like a handwritten note or sending a birthday card to some individuals isn't valuable to others, right? So everybody has different things that they value. So for the contractors who are listening to this, I'm sure one of the things they're thinking is, how do I find all that out though? Like, how do I determine what is valuable to some people and what is not? How do my technicians determine that in the home? How do my CSRs do on the phone? Especially when you're in the moment with somebody, right? How do you determine what is valuable to them and what's not, so that you don't make the mistake I made with the contractor when I assumed the insight I was giving him was valuable, but it clearly wasn't. Yeah.
I mean, so there's some soft skills to this and techniques from the customer side, but let's address your team members first, because that's actually fairly easy. And there's really two schools of thought on this, and I agree with both. But like, number one, when you hire somebody, you can have them do a personality test, and you can identify pretty quickly, pretty easily, what drives them, what motivates them, how do you get the best out of them. And I'm a big fan of doing that. I think that's great. And I don't want to go into specific programs for that, but you can look it up or send us an email and we can hit you up with some options. Another one too, though, is you have to be careful of having entirely different personalities in your business. That's a culture decision. If you have team members that really care about verbal appreciation, which by the way, everyone does, but some care more than others. And that's the personality you want your business to have and the culture you want to have. If someone doesn't care about that and they're not that vocal and they're not that personality, it's harsh, but maybe that's not a great fit for your organization. So from the team side, like, you should really be aware ahead of time. It's fairly easy to know what drives them and value. From a customer side, it's entirely different. Not that different, though, because your marketing should target people that go after specific value. Your experience on the phone should tie into that marketing. Your follow-up after the phone call before the technician should tie into that. Your technician experience should tie into that. Your follow-up after your technician leaves should all follow that. So you're reinforcing, but it's less clear because you have less control. Did that kind of answer the question, I guess, a little bit?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you your expectation beforehand, it seems like, in a lot of cases. And you should be prepared going in beforehand, knowing what is valuable to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially for team members. That's easy to do.
Yeah.
Customers, harder.
Yeah.
You touched on something there, Zach, which actually leads us perfectly into the last step of the pattern for excellence, is being grateful. So clearly, how you express like gratitude and how you thank is different for different people. But ultimately, if a person feels like they're not taken for granted and they're appreciated, it clearly goes a long way for morale. So being grateful, last step of the pattern for excellence. Brigham, give us a scoop.
Very simple with gratitude. It reinforces unity. And what do I mean by that? When you say thank you to somebody, what are you really saying? What you're saying is you made a difference. And when people feel like they've made a difference, they feel important, which is really important. And when they feel important, they become loyal. Loyal to you, loyal to your cause, loyal to your organization, loyal to the purpose that's inside your organization. And as they become more and more loyal, there is unity throughout the organization. With that unity, with that alignment, you grow. And that's the benefit of gratitude. So whatever amounts of gratitude that you are spewing onto your organization, triple it, because they need it. They need that recognition. They need to feel important. And when they do, it benefits you as well as them.
So let's, again, make this actionable. So give us an actionable way that a business owner could literally listen to this podcast and go ahead and kind of have an actionable as to how they can express their gratitude even more.
Yeah. So one of the things I like to do in my classes is have people take 30 seconds and write down everything they're grateful for. Why don't we do it real quick? You guys ready? 30 seconds, write down everything you're grateful for. Ready?
Okay, go.
Hurry, you've only got 25 seconds.
I'm not that fast a writer, man.
Let's go.
You know, Josh doesn't deserve my first gratitude being Josh because he's just rid rude. But you're up there, Josh.
If you've only got 2 things, you don't do this often enough. You need to do it more often.
Oh yeah, no, you should have a bloody list full of things.
10 more seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What are you grateful for?
Kick it off, Josh.
I'm not a fast writer, and like I do grateful exercises regularly. We wake up every morning and we Laura and I know this sounds corny and cheesy and she might give me shit for this, but we slow dance to a song every morning, which is an exercise of gratefulness.
Oh, I love that.
Dude, it's like the best way to be grateful to your life.
I love it.
You wake up every morning and you do one slow dance, and like it starts off just like, hey, I'm waking up, and then by the end you're like, oh.
Wait a minute. Morning breath and all?
Huh? Morning breath and all, man. Morning breath and all.
Yeah, it's morning breath and all.
Then we do like the Wim Hof breathing exercise, and like, you know, we've been to Tony Robbins events and all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not good at just writing them out. So I just wrote down for my wife, that was number 1, for business, for our lifestyle, for my health, for our family, for dogs. We just had an amazing vacation to Ireland, which we enjoyed a ton. So I wrote that. I wrote down warmth because I'm glad it's warm outside and I'm not stuck in a cold area. And that's all I had time to write in 30 seconds.
You literally, it feels like you robbed my list.
I did.
Oh, sure. That's a setup.
Oh,
yeah, no, very similar.
Yeah. You wrote it down as he said it. That's pretty good.
That's not true. Oh my gosh, I'm getting torn.
Her first one is my wife. I'm really appreciative of my wife.
Yeah. I got a wife at the side. You know, I kick with both feet. Josh, what was I going to say? Oh, I'm getting totally razzled and tore apart in this podcast. Guys, watch out. I'm coming for you in the next podcast.
Zach, you're up.
Yeah, Zach, you're next.
All right, I'm up. All right, here it is. Grateful for Melissa, Easton, Blakely. It's my kids and my wife. Paddleboarding. I love paddleboarding. That's my family, yes. Books, writing, food. I love food. Health, my good health, my neighbors, my work, my faith, the team I work with, and the Philadelphia Eagles.
What?
And how does it make you feel when you guys write this list down? I mean, how do you feel?
Grateful.
Makes you smile.
Crazy.
Fuzzy.
Crazy. It reinforces your gratitude, and that's what's most important. So that's one actionable way to be grateful and to remember that gratitude, it reinforces unity.
You're not getting out of this, Brigham. What are yours?
Family, health, freedom, PSP. Those are a few that make me happy and grateful.
Cool. There was something I was going to say, but I bloody forget.
Yeah. No, I think gratefulness, by the way, guys, everybody, it's a choice. It's an activity.
Absolutely.
It's a habit. You know, the easiest way to be happy in life is not the best way. It's to have low expectations. If you have low expectation, everything's amazing. A better way is to be grateful for what you have. You know, there's different techniques and there's all kinds of stuff, and you can read book after book after this. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. It's a great use of your time and your happiness and your enjoyment. And that happiness and enjoyment bleeds to all other aspects of your life. Not just your personal, but your business, your team, your money, everything. So being grateful is an amazing tool. And I know Laura's talked about this before, but there's actually, you know, a brain chemical. Go ahead.
Yeah, so part of my background was I actually studied human performance, and gratitude and like anger or unhappiness or disappointment, any negative emotion can simultaneously exist in the brain while you're feeling grateful. Like they neurochemically cannot. So like back to Brigham's point, being grateful, if it can cancel out those negative emotions, what a bloody game changer that is. And again,
it's a lot like anchoring, the first thing we covered, right?
Yeah. And if you practice being grateful, you're forming a neural pathway in your brain that your brain goes to gratitude way more often because you're developing that habit. So if you do that every morning, like write 10 things, like it took 10 seconds, you are developing the habit of being grateful. Then you're actually going to see things to be more grateful for in your employees and your team members and your wife. It has cascading effects throughout your life. So I think that's a really cool actionable, Brigham. Thanks for sharing. So we are out of time, and I think it's been super bloody valuable. So the pattern for excellence elements that we spoke about today were the importance of giving, asking, being valuable, being grateful. And guys, I hope you loved this podcast as much as we loved recording it, and reach out to us with more questions. And we're going to put lots of things in the show notes for you guys too. Josh, I can see you're about to speak. You're going to razzle me on something else. You may as well go for it. What do you want to say?
The key word there was recording it. Recording.
Josh, this is getting a bit old. Like, have you nothing else to come up with?
Oh, Brigham, you're like muted, man.
Muted,
I can't hear you, bud.
That's the next step after recording is unmuting.
Yeah, make sure you're unmuted.
Yes, I'm not the center of the slagging.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Lip Service for Contractors. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to leave us a review in the App Store and don't forget to share with your friends. Ideas are cheap. Implementation is what separates the winners from the watchers. Go out and implement these ideas. See you on the next episode of Lip Service for Contractors.